Welcome to Beast Metal Reviews. This is my first episode of anything ever. Please, right now, go and like this video, subscribe to my channel, because what you're getting from Beast Metal Reviews is you're getting a musician who has been dedicated to metal, all types of metal, for many, many years, and I'm just going to tell it like it is. A lot of it will be kind of based on what my preferences are. But a lot of it should be pretty universal. I'll be reviewing albums, I'll be interviewing bands and musicians, and I'll just be also giving out any other type of information that I think is newsworthy in the metal arena. So right now what we're going to have is my top 10 albums for 2024. I know it's a little bit late, but here it is. Late is better than never, I guess. But this year was a great year in metal. I personally am an avant-garde kind of metal guy, so I like the dissonant metal. I like bands that are really trying something different, but are still staying pretty heavy and pretty nasty. I like bands who are artists, for the most part, that really push their art, are really dedicated to their art. And I think this reflects in what you're going to see.
We design and test our own tools.
Coming in at number 10 is the band Ulcerate, Cutting the Throat of God. This album is outstanding. The only reason why I don't have it up any higher is because I have a little bit of a criticism of the vocals. And the vocal, there's two criticisms that I have. The vocals remain just about the same. He does get a little slightly lower at times, but it's very similar throughout the whole album. So he doesn't kind of change up the delivery very much. And the tempo of his delivery is almost the same formula through each song, which kind of renders his vocals a bit generic. So I really wish if they would add another vocalist, or add a vocalist who can do several different types of vocals and add to the variety. This band is fucking nuts. If this album was an instrumental, it's dissonant, it's really weird in what they're doing. They have really cool, like, kind of clean tone with it. It's heavy as hell. It has tempo changes. It has like everything that I love. And you know me, I really love dissonant avant-garde metal. This is dissonant, it's avant-garde, it's very similar to the previous album, which is outstanding. I hate to bring up some criticism, but I have to criticize the vocalist. The delivery kind of reminds me of Meshuggah. I don't like their vocalist. It's like the same, every song almost sounds the same because of the vocalist. And I would much rather watch Meshuggah live than I would not through just the headphones. But anyways, this band still makes my number 10 because all of the other instruments are like perfect. I love the songwriting, the tempo change, everything that I said before is absolutely outstanding. I highly recommend this album. I'm going to buy it on vinyl. It's excellent. I still like it. The vocals are not bad. They're just a bit one-dimensional, is what I would say. But again, the band for my number 10 is Ulcerate, and the album is called Cutting the Throat of God. Good title, isn't it? Coming in at number 9 is a band out of Ontario, Canada. This is a technical death metal band. Amazing. This is a band that brings loads of variety, amazing technique, especially vocals, guitars. The bass is prominent, drums are perfect. The drums are perfectly mixed as well. You can hear every tom. The snare is really clear. The kicks are really clear. Amazing production on this album. I'm talking about the band Apogean, and Apogean came out with the album Cyberstricted, and this album is nuts. Like I aforementioned, the amount of variety is unusual, and the use of variety and the tempo. Sometimes they kind of remind me of Nile with these really slow chugs, but these guys are more melodic than that. Not quite as dark, a little bit more acrobatic than Nile. I love me some Nile, but maybe just as complicated or maybe even more complicated than Nile. But this album is amazing. Easily could have been #1, just like every one of these albums that are on my list. Again, the band is Apogean out of Ontario, Canada, and the album is called Cyberstricted. So my #8 album of 2024, metal album of 2024, belongs to Oculus, the House of the Black Geminis. This album, just like their previous two, is very atmospheric, much more on the black metal side. Although something different for this album is the use of keyboards. It's still really atmospheric, really dark, really driving, really kind of evil and kind of scary sounding in a way. But what they've added this time are some deeper guttural growls. It's not just all kind of what we would think of traditional more black metal. It's a different album than the previous two. Maybe not quite as dark and eerie as the other two, but definitely dark and eerie, but very atmospheric, but a very dark atmosphere. Much more than like atmospheric black metal like Agalloch or Wolves in the Throne Room. But this is an album I highly recommend. I wouldn't argue with anybody if this was their favorite album of the year. Again, it is Oculus, the House of the Black Geminis, #8. So coming in at #7 for 2024 on my best metal albums of the year is Spectral Voice with Sparagmos. This is a very unique album. This album is like funeral doom, but super, super atmospheric. Really freaking dark. This album is a horror soundtrack. They have previous albums that are also really, really good. This one is one that I listened to a lot, especially in the last month or two. It is just punishingly dark and punishingly kind of death doom, funeral doom atmosphere. Like really, really good. Highly recommend this album. This is the album cover for it. I bought it on vinyl. I'm gonna buy, by the way, all of the albums that I have on my list are going to be purchased. Honorable mentions as well as my top 10. These are amazing albums. Anyways, on to the next. What is going to be #6? So my #6 album, best metal album for 2024 is Blood Incantations, Absolute Elsewhere. As all of the albums, even from my honorable mentions, all of these could be #1. I wouldn't argue with anybody if they made Blood Incantations, Absolute Elsewhere as their #1. This is an album that is truly kind of big. It's really grand. It's mixing prog elements. There's a lot of Pink Floyd elements in there, spacey stuff with some keyboards, guttural vocals, not super deep guttural vocals, but really progressive. The guitar work with dual guitars, the drumming, the production is amazing. It really is kind of an avant-garde album in that it's mixing like really like Pink Floyd meets kind of a thrashy kind of death metal, Prog death metal. It's really good, very technical, beautiful album, a little spacey as well, but I highly recommend it. Again, number 6 is Blood Incantations, Absolute Elsewhere. Check it out. My number 5 best metal album of 2024 belongs to a band called Teeth. Teeth came out with an album called The Will of Hate. I have listened to this album probably the third or fourth most out of all the albums that I've listened to this year. I love this album. What you get with the band Teeth, and they have several albums before that are also really, really good. This is a new band for me. I'd never heard of them before. And when I listened to this album on the first listen, I was just like, oh my gosh, and told my friend, like, listen to this song and then check out this song. We were listening to it together. It's so good. So what you get from Teeth is brutal death metal and also dissonant death metal. All guttural vocals, very dark, really unconventional avant-garde. The first song is not so much unconventional, but after that first track, the rest of the album just, to me, gets better and better and better. Dark, dissonant, brutal. The band, again, for my number 5 pick is Teeth, and the album is The Will of Hate. Coming in at number 4 on my best metal albums of 2024 is the one and the only Nile. Nile came out with The Underworld Awaits Us. I think it was early August. And this is a band I've seen a couple of times. I love them. I'm going to see them this Tuesday coming up, the 14th, up in Greenville, South Carolina. And that's actually where Carl Sanders formed the band in 1993. This album is outstanding, perhaps my favorite out of all of theirs, and they have a collection of so many amazing albums. But there were a few things that stood out for this one for me. They used kind of a choral effect with women singing in the background, and it's really eerie the way they used it. I really like that. The keyboards at times, they have the tempo changes as always, getting really, really slow. We reviewed this album on Tracks of the Damned through Reaper's Underground in August as well, so if you want to check that out, we went through every single song on the album. But this album is brutal, brilliant percussion throughout. The guitar solos are tasty. They have like 3 vocalists, and that brings in a level of variety that's just outstanding. Every song is interesting to me. Every song is loaded with tempo changes. That's super important for me because the variety, the element of variety has got to be there. And Nile fucking brings it, especially in this album, The Underworld Awaits Us All. This is my number 4 on my list for 2024. Number 3 for my 2024 best metal albums of the year comes from Pallbearer. Pallbearer, back in May, came out with the album Mind Burns Alive. They promised us something different. They finished this album in July the year before, and I had just seen the band in June, so they must have been, and they played 1 or 2 of the songs from the album, but I didn't really notice them when I saw them. But anyways, this album is different. It's very different. Like, they've kind of brought in, they've slowed things down, they've mellowed things out, and this is my number 3, so this is not a bad album at all. Is it as heavy as their others? No, but it's really catchy. This is an album I listen to a lot. And one of my criteria when I came up with my list is which albums did I keep going back to? And that kind of helped me. I'm not listening to what other people think. What bands did I actually listen to? Which albums did I listen to over and over and over again? And Pallbearer's Mind Burns Alive is one of them. It took me a while to get into it because it is softer, kinder, gentler than the previous albums, but the bass is there. It does get heavy, but it's a little bit more proggy and a little bit more like indie rock at times. So like Death Cab for Cutie a little bit, kind of reminds me of that a little bit at times. But in the end, I couldn't stop listening to this album over and over again. And after the first song, it does get progressively heavier. Beautiful melodies that are going to stick in your head throughout. You can sing along, you can hum to them. Really, really catchy songs. So they've made changes, but these are good changes. It's like adding to the variety. Do I want them to go back to, 10 years ago? I wouldn't mind that. I love those albums as well. But this is good for them, I think, as long as they don't soften up any more than what they have. Catatonia kind of overdid it at times, then they would come back, and I kind of like that. But these guys have softened it up, but it's really thoughtful, really clever in what they've done. Very thoughtful. The lyrics are melancholic and really well done. So anyways, check out Pallbearer, Mine Burns Alive, which is my number 3 pick for 2024. Coming in at number 2 for Human the Hoofed Beast's best metal albums of 2024 is a black metal band, but this is dissonant, avant-garde, absolute fucking avant-garde band. They are called Veilburner, and the album is The Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom. Oh my gosh, this album could easily be my number 1, but it released, I think, on the 24th of November, so I haven't had as much time to listen to it, but I love it. So what do I love about it? I love the vocalist more than anything else. This vocalist, he speaks, he has spoken word, but it's really creepy, kind of manic, crazy man, spoken vocal sometimes. He does the more traditional black metal, but his traditional black metal sounds more like he's gargling razor blades, like there's blood in there, like he's choking, but as evil as I have ever heard. This guy's vocals are the most evil. He also does vocals that are super evil, but more in the kind of lower range. But this dude sounds crazy. He's so inspired in what he's doing. He really paints a picture of kind of evil, and you're like suffering, like intense suffering in hell, of being tortured by this fucking monster. This album uses clean guitars at times, and there's a couple of songs, there are a couple of the Duality 1 and Duality 2 songs in there that use this clean guitar. And I love the way they use the clean guitar, but if you're a fan of Deathspell Omega, this is like Deathspell Omega on steroids in a way, as far as how intense and how dark and how evil sounding this album is. Loaded with variety, loaded with changes. No 2 songs sound alike. The entire album is super clever. This album is perhaps the most avant-garde of 2024. I love dissonant, I love time changes, I love somebody doing something unique that stands out, and Veilburner has accomplished this on this album, and previous albums are really good as well. So again, please check out the band. My number 2 of the year is Veilburner, and the album's title is The Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom. All right, we've come to my number 1 metal album of 2024. This is the album that I listened to the most. It came out in late January, and I listened to it. I never got sick of it. I listened to it this week. I still love every fucking song on the album. It is outstanding, and it's a departure. It's a very different album from the rest of their discography. And so I'm going to introduce this, and then I'm going to talk about my favorite album of the year. So the band is Inquisition. The album has a long title, so I have to read it. The title is Veneration of Medieval Mysticism and Cosmological Violence. Maybe I'll say this at the end, but that's a lot. Almost every song title is very long as well, so I'm not going to go into all those. Reaper and I did review this album back in, I think, early February or late January, and I really liked it then, and I just grew to love it more and more. So what's different about this album? It's still Inquisition, but they've added keyboards, and the keyboards are super tasty and make this album much more spacey and atmospheric and ambient. The way that he lets the guitar arpeggios, the single notes on a chord, stand out and he lets them ring out, they almost sound like bells. And with the arpeggios, when they're kind of slow and single note, a lot of times the keyboard accompanies those and it kind of sounds like bells are ringing in a certain way, but it sounds beautiful. And the vocals have he has this kind of weird white man kind of talking and singing throughout the songs. It's kind of like this, which sounds super white, and it's really weird and odd, but I fucking love it. The first time I listened to it, I was like, that's a little weird, but it really fits and it adds to the variety of it. And then you have the froggy, kind of croaking vocals that are a bit like Immortal, but to me a lot better than Immortal. I just really like them. The song titles are bizarre. It's a bit satanic throughout, a bit kind of occult, but it's really spacey and kind of airy and spiritual in a way, if you will. Super, super atmospheric, but unlike how anybody else has done it. So that's one of my criteria, that the band needs to stand out, either really, really well in what they're doing, in an outstanding manner, unlike anybody else, or they have to be unique. And this album is unique, and I don't think it's been reviewed really well by a lot of other people who like Inquisition, because it's a little bit more of a gentle album, but to me it's more clever. This is a much more mature album. It's really, really tasty in the things that he's doing there, and getting really dissimilar elements. I think Inquisition took a big risk with this album, and I'm glad they did, because it's a breath of fresh air to me. All of their albums are wonderful, but this is my favorite album out of all of the Inquisition albums. It has the most variety. It stands out from everybody else better than anything else. The drums are really straightforward, but I like how they are in the mix. The snare is big, but the snare is really prominent throughout. So you can hear it through the kind of semi-faster blast beats that they have. They're not real fast, they're more kind of mid-tempo, upper mid-tempo. But anyways, check out this album. It was my favorite. I listened to it over and over and over again. I think a lot of Inquisition fans kind of poo-pooed on the album just because it was different, but I love the keyboards. The keyboards aren't super prominent. They kind of sound like guitars a lot. And I like the change in the vocals. It's really good to me, and I like how they let the arpeggios ring out in each song, and it kind of reminds me of bells with those, with the keyboards in there. So again, my number one album of the year for 2024 is Inquisition, and the album is, where the hell is it? Veneration of Medieval Mysticism and Cosmological Violence. Check it out. So now we come to my honorable mentions for 2024, the best metal albums of the year. There's no special order. All of these should have been in my top 10, but I had to make some decisions, but these are all excellent albums. I am going to buy every one of these on the list. Coming in, the first one is going to be Pyrrhon, Phrrhon, and the album title is Exhaust. This is a band that reminds me a lot of Psyopus, a whole lot of Psyopus. So it's got some kind of mathcore, it's dissonant, but I like the vocals a lot better than Psyopus. So the vocals are a lot more death metal oriented, a lot more dynamic than just kind of the yelling, screaming that Psyopus had. An album full of creativity, super intense, throughout, so much variety throughout. This was probably the hardest one to leave off the top 10. It really belongs in there, but what else was I going to cut out? This year was great with albums. The next one is Engulf, The Dying Planet Weeps. Engulf is another great band. It's actually a project, and this is going to be some death metal, really well done death metal, but it has a flair of dissonance to it. But excellent vocals, deep, gurgly death metal vocals. The production is perfect, sounds so fucking good. This is an album, the first time you listen to it, you're going to go like, oh my gosh, this album's fucking amazing. It's really, really good. That is Engulf with The Dying Planet Weeps. Next one is we're going to do some black metal. So we're going with a band out of Germany named Jevel, and the album is called Not Till Ende. This is black metal. Nothing like totally brand new here, nothing avant-garde, but it's really, really raw, and the guitars are prominent. Really good tremolo picking, signature second wave black metal endings to all of their riffs. Just really, really good. Like, they do it and they do it really well, but this is more atmospheric, but it's darker than like Agalach or Wolves in the Throne Room to me. The vocals are a lot more kind of biting and dark, and it feels European. It feels a bit more Norwegian. All of the songs are done in German as well. Doesn't really matter, can't really understand it anyways. But excellent album. If you want atmospheric black metal that is a bit darker than usual, check out Jevel, and it is Not Till End. And I have two more. Vitriol, Suffer and Become. Oh my gosh, they put their foot on the pedal, on the gas pedal all the way. They never let up the whole time. Excellent drumming, amazing production on this album. Absolutely amazing. The way that the producer and the band got all of the instruments to be able to be heard when there's so much complex vocals going on. The arrangements are complex and blistering fast, blisteringly brutal. This album might take you a few less listens to get into because it's so fast and so heavy, but please do give it a chance. That is Vitriol, Suffer and Become. Excellent album. And the last one is one that I discovered just a few weeks ago. This is kind of a mix between Valenfire and Bolt Thrower, I would say. Really, really good. Or Morbid Angel. Yeah, probably more Morbid Angel and Valenfire. Vocals are great, fucking deep, fucking heavy, old school at the time, but it's got that sludgy stuff that Trey Azagat does with his guitars, down-tuned, like, duh, I mean, it's death metal. But an excellent album. I will be buying this album for fucking sure. I think it came out in August. It is Pneuma Hagion, and the album is called From Beyond. This album, it has the same title as Massacre, who put out a great album like in '92, I think it was, and that was called From Beyond. That had Bill Andrews on drums and Rick Ross from, like, three guys from the band Death, and Terry Butler on bass. But that was a really good album, so I kind of picked that up right away. But this is an excellent album. Just, if you like Valenfire and if you like Morbid Angel, you want to blend them together, you get Pneuma Hagion, and that album's title is From Beyond. So those are my honorable mentions. All 5 or 6 of those should totally be in the top 10, but I could only choose 10. They're all excellent albums. First time you listen to them, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you later.